Hello, Ari. Thank you so much for coming on to the Everyday Mystic.
Thank you, Carissa. Always a treat to reconnect. We've been talking a lot lately, so this is so cool.
I know I feel so blessed to have had all these great conversations with you in such a short time. And I don't know what your women community is like in where you live in South Florida, but I think I've been moving around so much that I haven't
Mm,
been able to establish yet these strong, well, I left a strong women community in the Austin area to come where I am now and just, spend such a short time here. Hasn't happened. So I so crave time like this with strong and beautiful and aligned women
oh,
like yourself. So thank you so much for spending this
thank
time.
you. Absolutely.
Yay. Well, we're going to talk a bit today about your journey and about where you came from and where you are now. Let's start with where you're at now,
Yeah.
with what you're doing and what's taking up most of your time, space, energy these days.
Um, well, as we were just chatting briefly before recording, I'm a mom. That takes up a lot of my time. And, I've always been very like high achieving, straight A student, cum laude, the whole thing. And I was like, okay, career. Even when I was like freelancing, it was like that like achieving mindset. And ever since I had my daughter, it hasn't gone away, but I've shifted the priorities of, how I spend my time and when I, try to cut off because it's hard nowadays with the freaking phone to like cut off. It's like we're
Mm.
on this 24/7 like, urgent living. But so yeah, I'm a mom. That's the first thing. And then I run several projects simultaneously. Blessed to be Gemini's,
Yeah,
best
right.
sign out there. I'm just gonna throw it out there. So I'm like a multi-passionate, and my main two focuses for the last 6 years have been I have a business and marketing consulting program. It's called the Evolve Digital CEO and a profitable retreats program. So I run both of these things throughout the year. And it's really about helping wellness entrepreneurs level up their brand, level up their marketing, and use online strategies to get more visibility, the whole shebang, lead webinars, challenges. And then I have the Yoga Expo, which is how we met, which is the largest yoga trade show in the United States. And it's been a blessing to be running that for the last few years. And this year I brought on, or last year actually, I brought on an amazing partner, Sandra, who's helping the busy mom. She's also a busy mom. She's got three, but they're grown. So I'm like, it's different. You know that. You're like, they can feed themselves.
Right.
And so that's my main two focuses. But also, I'm the marketing director for TEDx Miami. And I now am taking over my dad's ecom business because I needed something else to do.
Wow. You needed another hat. Your hat wall wasn't filled enough.
It wasn't filled enough. It wasn't filled
Oh,
enough.
wow. Well, your dad's lucky to have your skills going into his ego.
They need it. It's like it's been a family business for years and years. And I was so like, I don't want to work, you know what I mean? Like sometimes working with family, but um, I'm like, what's my legacy?
Yeah.
And like if I can support my family who are always supporting me, like why, I mean, how it's almost like I feel responsible and in a good way, right?
Mhm.
And already I'm like taking over everything. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna end up being CEO of this company. I know it. A gentle takeover, no offense.
Right. The reluctant CEO.
Yeah.
Um, that I love that you have so many different projects because as a fellow Gemini, I understand both the drive to do a lot of things and also the boredom that
Yeah.
comes when you are only doing
Yeah.
one thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we can't help ourselves, right?
Yeah.
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 So,
I
but I
I
do love that you prioritized momhood first. Did that Was that a gentle process of momhood taking priority? Was it just like immediately known when you were pregnant or she was born, or did you kind of have to ease yourself into that?
Um, that's a great question. And I kind of have been reflecting on that quite a bit because, she was born a week before the pandemic. March 6th is Solen's birthday, and
Mm,
March 13th, I believe, everything was like, wow.
right.
So it forced me into this cocooning and nourishing my motherly side, which I never thought I had.
Mm.
And it's funny, I went to an event with one of my friends who she does like feng shui and Chinese astrology, all this really cool stuff. And she was like, "You're such a mother. You're always taking care of everything." She's like, "It just hasn't manifested in a human form." And I was like, "Oh, stop. I'm like not, nurturing." And she's like, "You are, just in your own way." And that was like that, happened right before I got pregnant.
Mm.
And so I already kind of had this like new, sometimes when people point things out to you, it's different than when you have the awareness. We talked about this on my podcast the other day, kind of like, oh, if I tell you this, it's like, oh yeah, like the catalyst. So, and we pulled my card, and it was like the card of the cocoon, and of my year of the cocoon in Chinese astrology. And then we pulled the card, and it was like the mother card.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
fine. Fine, universe. And so when I had Solen, I had a not super fun pregnancy and not super fun post partum recovery. So I was kind of forced to chill. Like, you're telling this person to chill, it's very difficult. And I actually really enjoy just being like, you know what? Like, my boss didn't really give me a long maternity leave, but because I wasn't feeling well, it made me like do
Mm.
a little bit longer, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I really enjoyed the pause.
Yeah.
And because of the pandemic and because of what I do, right? I help people get online. My business actually like grew quite a bit in that first year. I had already been doing it for a few years, but people just started reaching out to me like, please help me, please help me. A lot of yoga teachers. And I was also really cognizant of who I took on as a client. And I was like, I need to work with moms who get it, because, there was a day I was coaching and I had Solen in like her little pouch, and she just like shit all over me. It was
Oh,
like a
God.
river of diarrhea. And I was like, I remember talking to my client Wes, and I was like, and there was like poop flying everywhere. And she was just cracking up, and I was like, I'm so blessed with what I do. Like, if this had been like a, corporate board meeting, like, who knows? Um, so I don't know if that answered your question, but it's been this like re relearning of who I can be. Like, I don't have to be busy all the time. Like, I can sit and color. And like, we did Legos yesterday for this first time. I was saving them because, I'm sure Legos are.
Ooh, yeah.
And I was like putting the Legos, and she's like, "Mommy, let me do it." I was like, did I just take over your Lego like architecture? Totally.
Right, right. You're like, mommy's playing.
But yeah, it feels really nice to feel like I can have it all. I can work my ass off, because I do. Like, I woke up at 3 with like these great ideas, and I just like worked till like 4:30, went back to sleep, snuggled, woke up, breakfast, whole fam thing, took her to school. Me and my husband take her to school every morning. So it's pretty nice.
Mm, yeah, and it sounds like she's been a really powerful teacher for you.
Huge. She's a Pisces,
Mm,
and she's very like dramatic and emotional.
hmm.
And so I have to be like, emotion, emotion, Solen. Yes, I understand you. Cry, cry, be that. It's amazing. I'm just gonna I'm going to just sit here and like let you do that versus being like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know, if you feel the same way as I do, because I had a similar experience of waiting, doing career first and then waiting, even, my husband and I were married for 5 years before we had our son, and we were unsure whether we were
Mm.
going to have a child. We were in that,
Same with us.
yeah, it
Same.
was just like, oh, I don't know, our lifestyle and this and that. And, is it going to, do we want to bring a child into this world and all of these things? And, you get so established in your
Yeah.
life living certain ways. And it wasn't until a vacation where, we had lived it up, in multiple countries in Europe. And it was like the last couple days, and we were in Switzerland along the banks of Lake Lucerne.
Oh,
And oh
yes.
no, sorry,
So
this was
beautiful.
we were in Zurich. We were along
Okay.
that lake in Zurich, and we were just, strolling along in our kind of little bubble, and then we look out and we see this little kid on a balance bike. One of those, they don't have pedals. They're just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they're big here now, but for they originated in Europe, and
Mm.
you never saw them here until a certain time period. But anyway, see this little kid zipping along the banks of the lake, and then we see the parents just lounging on a blanket. They have the wine and their picnic, and they're just, looking lovingly towards this child. And we looked at each other and we were like, oh, like all of a sudden we saw what parenting could be like. And I know there was just like such a little sliver of life, such a, we didn't see, the kid having a meltdown 5 hours later when he was starving and the parents were
Yeah.
but it was this sliver of time that gave us a different perspective than what we had been thinking about as parenting, what we had been dreading as parenting based on what we had heard, and the parents that are friends of ours that we talked to, and then as well as our own experiences being children of parents who, had their issues. So it was like this perspective shift immediately. And also I think divine timing was there, and we just looked at each other and we were like, this is it. Like we knew immediately like we were going to have a child, and we did. We conceived later that like that fall, that in that September, after we decided to do it, we're like, okay, we're going to do it. So it was this very conscious choice. Being of that age and of that time period of my life, I feel very blessed to have made a very conscious decision
Yeah.
around it.
Yeah. It sounds similar to us because I mean your son's 11, so I think you had maybe your son when you were around 39 from
Yeah,
I was 39 as well when I had
exactly.
my daughter. And I had, had a connection with the universe and I have I have magical powers. I'll just say that. I'm not going to guess myself, but I had said if we get pregnant, I want to make sure I have the baby before 39, before 40, before 40. And I don't know why it just felt like, if we take too long, like I don't want to be like, a very old mom. Like I'm already like the oldest mom out of like most of the moms in her school. And lo and behold, we went on vacation to England, boop, got pregnant. And I had her 3 months before I turned 40.
Mm.
And it was again that like we had been like, okay, we're open to it. We have like tons of family support. We live here in Miami. Both of our families live here, at least our nuclear families for that. And we were like, yeah, like why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we have like this beautiful child? And I had always had a doubt because so I was born with a very, 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 very rare immune deficiency called neutropenia. And basically my body goes from having like white blood cells to no white blood cells. So when I was little, and that's one of the reasons why we moved here from Peru in the late 80s, is because there was massive terrorism and there was no medicine.
Mm.
And me and both my brother and I have it. And so my parents dealt with two extremely sick children because basically it's infections, whether it's a throat infection, a staph infection, any infectious things, my mom would like call a pharmacy for, it was like a medicine called like Rosefin, and they'd be like, nope, we don't have it. She'd call the next pharmacy. They'd be like, oh yeah, we have one. They'd drive to it and they'd be like, no, we don't have it. And
Oh,
then she'd call another pharmacy and they're like, yeah, we have it. And she would go and buy all the medicine. But you know, at 6 o'clock at night, there was, what are they called? Like when you can't go outside, I think in
a
Spanish,
curfew?
curfews. Thank you. I think in Spanish. So I'm like, and she'd have, you know, me or my brother with like 104 fever.
Oh, that's
So
scary.
that super scary. And of course, 50% chance that I would give it to my daughter. So I was like, do I really need to like go through that? And yes, of course, I gave it to my daughter. My brother gave it to my nephew.
Mm.
We didn't give it to them. I don't like to say that. But luckily, we live in 2023 and there's medicine. So I give her a shot 3 times a month, and that like we're good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you moved here from Peru, did you go straight to Miami or South
Yeah.
Florida?
Yeah. We came straight here. I was really lucky. My grandfather had an apartment, so we would vacation here already. So I've been coming to Miami since I was about 3. And my mom's family had been coming here for years before that. So it was still a hard transition. You know, it's funny how the mind works. I thought that I was really excited about coming here and that I was really happy. And actually, not too long ago, I was talking to my mom and she was like, no, you were not happy. You, you left your entire family, you left all your friends. Like, you were not happy. And then I did a hypnosis session the other day because I had, we're dealing with traumas, and we did like inner child healing, and like a lot of fear and a lot of loneliness came up
Mm.
around that time. So it was really interesting, and how like, because I think I'm such an independent, strong person, my mind had almost re-patterned itself to think, oh, I was fine, I was happy, I was excited about moving to Miami. Because when we lived in Peru, like anytime my grandfather came from Miami and brought me a gift, I'd be like, oh, it's from the United States. Wow. So I had connected those dots as kind of this like, yay, but it wasn't. And that like literally this has been in the last like couple months, all this like new awarenesses, and it's brought up a lot of healing. And also a lot of like, oh wow, like I have still like so much work to do to heal that like little girl who felt lonely.
Yeah. That's so beautiful that you're going through that, because I think often we our minds are so powerful, and our trauma responses are so good at what they do.
Yeah.
They protect us and they get us through those hard times, and it's a powerful set of resources that you can have and call on in those times of trauma. And yet they can also mask true feelings and emotions,
Yeah.
and also keep that stuck within the
Yeah.
body and within the nervous system, so that we're responding not from that genuine place, but from that trauma response place. So it's fascinating that we can have in our, we're both now 50 going on 50. We can have these conversations with
Mm-hmm.
those inner child parts of ourself,
Yeah.
and be able to nurture and embrace and give them what they need now. And it works.
And it
It's not
works.
just like this, oh, okay, we're gonna, have this little conversation with my 3-year-old self or my 8. How old were you when you
I
came
was
over?
9. I was 9. I was
Yeah.
I was I was still 8. I moved here like right after my birthday. So but like all the pre stuff, happened when I was 8. So yeah, it was little, little.
Yeah, so little, and you don't know, right? You don't know anything about what's going to happen. What we don't have enough life experience yet
No.
to know and come up with anything. So it's just like we very, very intelligently come up with with a whole set of skills, responses to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's getting out of that protective shell bubble that we get to do as adults and in healing work. So I love that you're doing that. Tell us a little bit more about your healing journey. And I know you've been kind of embarking on this recently, but have there been things in the past
Oh my
too
God,
that you?
so many.
Yeah.
So I was introduced to the world of spirituality, as I call it now. I grew up Catholic, South American, Catholic, went to Catholic high school, the whole shebang. But my dad's atheist. So very interesting. Yeah, my dad's atheist. Um, Got to see it to believe it. And I remember when I was like 14, we went to church because even though he was atheist, we'd still go to church on Sundays, just culturally. And I looked at him and I was like, I don't ever want to come back here. And he was like, oh, thank God. We left. Left my mom and my brother in there. And but when I was about 20, I think I was 20, I was like dating this like DJ musician because I was, Miami girl. I was like, I had to like be in the scene.
Mhm.
And he was like, you should really go to yoga. And I was like, what is that? Like I had learned about other religions, obviously in school, I wasn't blind to Buddhism, but I had never really adopted them or embraced them as any sort of lifestyle. So I went to my first yoga class when I was, I think like right when I turned 21. I was still in university. And it was the hardest freaking thing that I had ever experienced. Physically, I was always strong. I was fit. I've always exercised. I played sports in school, everything. But there was something about one, I wasn't flexible. I couldn't touch my toes. If like you gave me $100, no way. And the mind.
Mm.
There was, I had never experienced that in my entire life. And I'm sure those of you who are listening who, had these like the first time you meditated, that you actually meditated, right? That you felt that difference. Well, the cool thing about yoga, and I've been teaching yoga since 2005. Like I started practicing in '01 and then I started teaching in '05. And the cool thing about yoga is that because your body gets put through the ringer per se, and then you go into rest mode, like breathe and rest mode, your nervous system just kind of has this like, I cuss, like a what the fuck moment.
Mhm.
And you just stop. So the Shavasana was this insane experience, for a 21-year-old who like loved partying and like was, I was going to architecture school. Like I was just like, ah! I had never felt that. And I got hooked.
Mm.
So a lot of, I think of my healing work was one, I embraced a healthier lifestyle. So I started learning about, sattvic eating, alkaline eating. I stopped. I was all, I grew up luckily like home cooked meals and I've had that tradition. So I was never a junk food eater, but it all kind of like went wayside. I went mainly vegetarian, pescatarian for the most part. Um, so I started healing my physical body because remember, I still have this immune condition. So the, the sicknesses, like you know, we're still there after puberty, like things for whatever reason kind of balance out.
Mm.
But still I was owning my health. So that was my first healing, realizing that and realizing that I could do like acupuncture and that I could do holistic treatments, body talk, Reiki, right? So I started delving into healing my physical body. And then the mental body, I stopped partying. I mean, I didn't stop, but I really partied. So like I stopped drinking, I didn't smoke as much weed. Like there
Mhm.
were just lifestyle choices that I chose. And then the people I started hanging around with. So that was a big healing because I had, this kind of posse of nightclub life. And I really started shifting my friendships and I lost a lot of friends. but I guess I was meant to. They were like, "What are you doing? Like, you're kind of crazy," and adopted these like beautiful new relationships. So the healing journey, I think, was more on my lifestyle versus like I. Luckily, I'm gonna say, other than like being a sick kid and moving, like I had a really beautiful upbringing, very family oriented. We lived in a really nice place. I've traveled with my parents like extensively. Um, really strong connections to my grandparents, my cousins. So I never had anything that was like a marked like trauma, right? And I'm so
You
like,
had like the physical trauma, not emotional trauma.
yeah,
Yeah.
and again, like the moving and loss of identity. I think that was the biggest one.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the just toxic lifestyle, toxic from high school and college. Um, so I did like a 180 on my life, and I quit architecture school because I realized I didn't want to be an architect. Oops, sorry, parents, for that. But then I went into graphic design school. Like I was always artistic, so I was like, oh, I have freedom now. Like architecture was still very, I needed walls and structure, and I was like, I can't deal with this. So I went to art school. I was much happier in art school, and I was able to create a very independent lifestyle where I started freelancing, and I was able to, if I want to go on a trip, I'm going backpacking to Europe for a month, and then I'll come back, pick up new gigs, worked in photography. So it just allowed so much of who I really was to come out, because I've always been very free spirited, independent, stubborn as to like, this is what I want. I'm going to get it. So, so I think the healing journey has been this like long process of just like undoing limiting beliefs, undoing preconceived cultural beliefs. My family, every time I went to Peru, thought I was crazy, right? I had like 7 earrings. I had a tattoo when I was 18. They're like, oh. So feeling like I wasn't accepted for a while. And, and I think that healing, like, I think it's more of a reconnecting to my own self that's been my journey versus a lot of healing, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that the reconnecting to your true self, who you really are, is healing.
Yes.
It's absolutely, there's so many, let's say, depths of these wounds, right? You can
Right.
have uh, something that is as traumatic as an accident, or something as mundane as, another type of accident, but maybe it's like a little bike accident versus
Right.
like a crazy car accident. But the bike accident and the fear, because of what it brings up in you, and you don't know in those flash
Yeah.
moments of what's actually going to happen, that can create the same kind of jolt and then firing within your nervous system to set you up for a trauma response later. So all of it's so relative, and
It's
I've
relative.
said this, right, for so long, that when we get into a place of comparing our traumas, hurts, pains, issues, problems with others, then we really pull out of ourselves, our
Yeah.
own self, because all we know is ourself. All we know are our own references. You can hear stories, you can, witness something, but you don't know what that actually feels like to experience it within your body system, your mental system, your spiritual system, unless you actually experience it. And
Yeah.
so what we experience are the references that we have, that we for which we then create a whole map and view of the world through. So our traumas are our traumas, our issues are our issues, and our problems are as big as our problems are big for us. And but at the same time, I guess on the flip side of that is that they can also be made we can lessen them and make them
Mm-hmm.
smaller, and we can also diminish them as well because of that not relativity in this case, but kind of the almost like the malleability of it, because it's
Mm,
all energy,
yeah.
energy that has some sort of impact effect on us. And then we, as magical beings that you were talking about earlier, you stepping into and owning the magical beingness that you have, is like we as beings who can actually co-create with the universe and work with this energy, we can change the impact of that energy. We can change that energetic frequency of something. And that is where the true owning, right? The
Yeah.
true like stepping into your fullness and uh your just, yeah, just that full wholeness, I guess, which yoga is so incredible at, that union with the divine.
It's so beautiful. And I remember I did Akashic record a few years ago, and the lady was like, "Do you feel guilt? Like I see a lot of guilt in your past life. I see a lot of this." She started asking me all these questions, and I was like, "No, no, I actually I don't know. I don't associate with this guilt story that you're bringing up. I don't associate with this like remorse feeling or um and I think like literally practicing so much yoga and doing so much meditation for almost 20 years. I mean, right? Like
Yeah.
I was like I think maybe I've kind of burnt um those past, karmas because I mean, there are days that whether I was practicing or, taking trainings, going on retreats with teachers, with masters, just being in their presence and like doing the breathing and doing the asana and doing, right? Like, I'm like, that's what it's supposed to do. Yoga is supposed to move us through the 8 stages of enlightenment. And, and I'm I was like, I think it worked to a certain extent.
It's like you don't know until you run into a situation that tests it, or you get asked, you're like, wait, actually.
I remember like years ago, my husband and I had just gotten off the plane from Puerto Rico, and it was midnight. It was one of those like late flights. We got in the car, drove to get sushi, and as we're like pulling into the sushi place, this lady rear ends us like a freaking bowling, what's it called? Not bowling ball, like a cue ball, and totals the car.
Oh,
And I remember like getting out of the car and doing like a gentle forward bend. And like the paramedics come, they take my like blood pressure. They're like, "Are you sure you just got into a car accident?" And I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I'm a yogi." Like I've just been like meditating and like I just like sat and like, I was like decompress the body. They're like, "You're not hurt?" I was like, "No."
hmm
Again, luckily, it could have obviously been a lot worse, but I was like, the practices, the tools that we adopt, and I love that we talked briefly about this the other day, right? It's like we have all these tools, tool, like they all do something, and the key is in using them. I like to think of Felix the cat. Maybe like some of the younger listeners might not resonate, but do you remember Felix? Like he had
Yeah.
this like bag and he would open up this bag and like pull out a ladder or like pull out a car. Like it was like the never, and I was like, that's what you know, luckily the fact that we've had exposure to all these modalities. And that's why I'm always like so blessed that I feel like that we moved to this country because like yoga was like a novelty in Peru by like the year 2000, and I had, you see what it like, it's very different. And I'm like, I'm so lucky that I got introduced to these practices that I could be like, oh, let me do a breathing technique to lower my my nervous system. Let me do this like gentle forward bend. Like we have these tools, and it's us using them and saying, you know what, like, remember, this is going to do this. Let's apply that now.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like through my, through my teachings as kind of mentorship that I've been so blessed to do for the last like 15 years. And I'm like, the fact that I've given this gift to people, I'm like, oh, we need more of this in the world. Like, please, that's why I love being a business coach. I'm like, please go help more people with like your magic. Like, please, like, be better on video so that people really like see you and feel you and hear you. Because the more that we can expand, like, please go to South America and, share this beauty. Like, please start leading retreats, because what happens in a classroom is like this much of what you can do in a 5-day retreat. Please. So yeah, I think it's so beautiful that the age of communication that we're in gives us like literally, like, I don't have my phone here, but like, it's like, hi, instant access. And now with AI, forget it. Like, you can just go to ChatGPT and be like, hey, ChatGPT, like, can you give me the best 5 meditations for anxiety? And it'll be like, there it is, So it's so cool, kind of scary, and so cool.
Yeah, a little freaky, but yeah, the access to information and into resources, to not be so alone in your problems or in your healing, even since we've been talking about healing, or in your expansion.
Yeah.
Right? We have so many people like you that we can learn from. We can take your courses, we can learn just from your videos and the content that you share on Instagram. And we all have the ability to tap into this vast resource of the internet. It's phenomenal. It's almost like, well, if you don't have all the answers to all your problems by this point, then you're kind of fucked, because you've got it right here. So the problem then is is within.
Is within.
Problem at that point is, and where you need to look to is, why am I not getting those answers? Seeking those answers, figuring this out, getting those resources and using them, actually compiling the tool bag and having it by my side. Why am I not?
Wow.
And I think that's the best question for anyone to ask at the beginning of a healing or spiritual journey is the why. It's the desire to want something different, but then the why am I not living that way now? Right. And then, then it just opens up this whole, right?
Yeah. And it's like, I loved how, remember, now we're like ping ponging with podcasts, but you were sharing your story about how you had to sacrifice like the big house with the 2-car garage and the whole shebang. And it's like, sometimes in order to find our happiness, our true north, our core, there's things that you have to sacrifice, or that you want to sacrifice. I don't like to speak in halves. Like, I chose to sacrifice those friends that weren't helping me right in my new lifestyle. I chose to end the relationship that was toxic. I chose to, and it's like, sometimes it's easy to stay in your day to day, in what you're comfortable in, because there's nothing, come on, like comfort, it's like a warm, cozy blanket. And when somebody takes it off, you're like, oh, I'm cold. Like, what's going on? Where's my blankie? But man, sometimes pulling off that blanket is the best thing you could do. Like right now, my husband and I, we're kind of in this, I don't know, people call it midlife crisis, but I'm like, no, we're like in a new exploration. And he's been in sales for the last like 10 years, and it was making him miserable. And I was like, I mean, you're making money, but like, your soul is dying. Like, do you really want to do this? And he's a healer. Like, he was a massage therapist for like 20 years. He's going back to school at 44 to get, eventually go to nursing. And now he's exploring his passions. I'm like, okay, you do need to bring some money home, and like, we can be in this kind of limbo for a couple months while you figure things out. And same with me. I was like, like, I didn't want to do the yoga expo alone. And I've had bad experiences with partnerships in the past. And I was like, do I want to, bring in somebody into my business? Like, is that something that I made and I don't want to call it the sacrifice, but it was like I sacrificed that belief to open up to bring in this amazing woman into my life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I ask, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to release? What are those anchors that are pulling you down? Because sometimes we think, oh, anchored, I'm grounded. No, you're sinking, babe. You're sinking. And what would it look like to remove that shackle and fly? Is it moving into a smaller home? Is it quitting the job that's making you miserable, right? Like, never sacrifice your safety. I'm always like, first chakra needs to be good, and what would it look like if it was just a little different? Like, we have a beautiful home. And I was telling my husband, I was like, I kind of want to live in like Costa Rica for a summer or maybe longer. Like, I've always wanted, that's been on my like bucket list to live there. I've been there like 8 times. And I go, can you take your classes online? Can we like rent the house out and just like go get like a 2-bedroom like thing by the beach? Can we do that? And it would sacrifice our like success, of like having the nicer house and me having my office. I'm like, I could throw up a laptop in our bedroom and I could still work. Like, it, at the end of the day, like, what is going to make us happy and fulfilled? And, there's nothing that is going to ever let you do that if you don't allow the release.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so powerful.
It is. It's so powerful. We are held back, held down, as you were saying, with those anchors by so many things, right? Beliefs and emotions that we have not yet explored,
Mm-hmm.
thoughts that we think are our own thoughts, but actually no, those are our parents' thoughts, or those
Yeah.
are society's thoughts, or wait a minute, who the hell gave me that?
Who is that?
No, it's like when you get into that exploration, you get to really discover the you beneath all of those
Yeah.
things. And then I think, whenever you ask yourself those questions of like, oh, can we do this thing, or can I make that sacrifice, or is this the right choice? You more instantly know yes or no, right? It's like you're
Right.
so
Yeah.
tuned in to yourself beneath all of the conditioning and the bullshit and the whatever, that you just instantly get those answers.
Yeah.
And that is really the gift of throwing the blanket off. Like, get vulnerable, get uncomfortable, get free, and you're going to find this inner resource that is beyond anything that we can actually grasp from out here or get from out here, that we think is going to help solve all of our issues, problems,
Yeah.
concerns, and give us the life we want. It's like, no, all of that is coming from within. And it's so easy to access once you do. It's just
Right.
the hard part is in the surrender
Yeah.
of getting there, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And maybe figuring it out, like, um, the whole thing that I think really was a big awakening for me. I had this amazing coach. His name's Jim Bunch. I don't know if he coaches anymore, but one day he asked me, he's like,
I know a Jim Bunch too,
oh, you
but
do?
I don't think it's the same person.
Oh,
I don't think he's been a coach, but
okay. Well, no, Jim was a coach for sure. Just amazing human being. And I was in his mastermind and we were having dinner with John Assaraf. I don't know if you know John
I
Assaraf.
know John. Yeah.
So we're having dinner and Jim looks at me. He's like, Ari, what is fear to you? And I was like, I don't know. I've never thought about that. Great question. He was like, yeah, what's fear to you? Is it a driver or is it a stopper? And I was like, it's a driver. And I
Mm.
hadn't thought about that before, but a lot of people have always like this question comes up, Ari, how do you, how have you done what you're doing? Or like, how do you do what you do? how did you become the owner of the yoga expo? Like, wasn't that scary? And I was like, yeah, totally. Like, I didn't know how to run a, 1,500 person trade show / conference before. Like I'd led retreats and teacher trainings with 15 people. It's a very different animal. And I
Yeah,
was
just
like,
multiply that by 100.
whatever. Get sponsors, vendors, like have to buy a booth. What? Like, and I was like, of course it was scary. And I was like, but my thought has always been like, what's scarier? Not trying? Like that is scarier to me. Like I'm all about like notches on my belt. Like I'm an experience junkie. That's why I've traveled like, to 35 countries, and I've, done crazy, like I've done crazy shit, like, like mountain biking down the Andes, or like, oh, let's just like get in a car and like drive to another country in Europe, like in the middle of the night because I wanted to. I'm a little bit more impulsive than my husband. He's more like,
Are
do you
you
really, are you
sure?
sure? And I'm like, yeah, let's go. um, and I think because of that, like I take calculated risks. I ask, like now I've learned to ask questions. Like if you leave it up to me, I probably would make more mistakes, but I've leaned in on the power of asking questions to the right people. The mentor, the consultant, the coach, the person who's already laid that path before me and has a different understanding. And that I think has really helped. So if you are trying to do this alone, whatever it is that, if you're listening to this and you're kind of on this brink of wanting to do something different, new, potentially risky, whether it's emotionally risky, physically risky, mentally risky, right? Financially risky, lean in to support. And do your due diligence, right? Ask questions, like make sure you find the right person. It could be a friend. It could be somebody that's just, you're like, oh, I have this like uber successful friend. Like, what would it look like to ask them? Because a lot of the times I feel like we kind of like stay cocooned in this fear or in this risk aversion because we don't want to bother people.
Yeah.
Right. But like now, come on, the coaching industry is booming for a reason. Because if I can help you with my 20 years of experience opening yoga studios, closing yoga studios, running large shows, leading retreats, right? Being a freelance, like if I can help you and tell you, oh my God, don't do that. Don't do that. Do this instead. And then do that. Right? If I can save you time, if I can be like, let me be a sounding board for you. Like, isn't that beautiful? We didn't have this. Like, I remember when I was opening my yoga studio, this is like 2011 is when we decided to open the yoga studio. Like, there weren't like business coaches everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I hired my first business coach around 2016. And I asked different questions. I looked at our finances different. I was like, we need to raise all our prices like now, right? We need to restructure. We need to, da, 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 da. And it was like, oh, if I hadn't asked these questions, we'd still be trying to figure it out on our own. Like being like, oh, does this work? Does that work?
Yeah.
So, and that part, business is very like, you can see it in terms of numbers, but emotionally, like if you're trying to leave a relationship that just doesn't serve you anymore, lean in for help. There's somebody there waiting to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Corissa, with her like healing magic, like maybe it's an amazing holistic therapist. Maybe, like I said, it's a friend that like already went through it, but just ask different questions. Don't try to do it alone too much.
Mm-hmm.
Too much.
Yeah.
Because
I
doing it
love.
alone is good though, right? But like
Mhm.
all the time, eh.
Yeah, I mean, I think the alone part is the like the synthesizing of the information. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, how do I make that my own? How do I
Right.
use it? How do I take action on
Right.
that from which I just gleaned from this resource, that resource, right? So you can do things alone, but what I hear you saying is that take in resources and information and inspiration from all these different places and then figure out how am I, my unique self, going to use all of this and
Yes.
make it my own. And that's
Yes.
just the true words of a CEO. And I love that you're saying it because I think some people have maybe the impression that a CEO has all the answers. Well, they wouldn't become CEO unless they had all the answers themselves. It's like, well, how do you come to have all the answers?
Yeah.
It's exactly how you just said. It's by opening up your ears and taking things in and learning from others. And I had this period of time where I was studying neurolinguistic programming, studying Tony Robbins, and all of that type of work.
Yeah.
And there's a there's a concept within NLP of modeling, which
Yeah.
is basic, right? It's exactly what it sounds like. It's look at and then model yourself after whatever it is you seek, whatever it is that you're trying to do and learn. And this is true of the underpinning of neuroscience as well, is that you will, create that mental visualization of what it is you want, because you
Mm.
when you build it in here, when you build it internally, thinking about it, feeling it, seeing it, um, following after it in that modeling sense, then it becomes real for you. It
Yeah.
becomes something that you can then, when you're actually learning the nuts and bolts part, it's like you've been working at it from an internal perspective too. And I feel like yoga is a lot like that as well, because it's not just movement and breathing, but you're also, at least from what I understand of it, you're also visualizing and embodying concepts,
Yeah.
energetic shifts, uh, things, stories, even as you move and breathe and do things. Uh, Tell me more about your future of yoga and the future of the Yoga Expo, and where you're taking things, because you've done so much in the yoga industry to date.
Yeah.
So where do you go from here?
Um, so something that we first, I had always owned Florida, and now with Sandra, we own the entire company. So that was something that happened last year. I was a
Of the
licensee.
Yoga
Yep.
Expo
And then I,
company.
I bought out the brand, brought in Sandra. And so now we have the bi-coastal show, LA and Florida, and we're looking to expand. That's number one. Looking to expand. Two is licensing. So like, let's say you're in Texas.
Currently Oklahoma, but
Okay.
soon to be Arkansas.
Okay. So let's say you wanted to do the Yoga Expo Oklahoma. We could like we want to look into licensing and expanding that aspect of it. Again, that's how I got started and it was amazing. So want to it was very like, I got like a piece of paper and like some coaching calls. We want to like really structure it correctly.
Right. Give people some real,
Yeah.
yeah, real
Yeah,
training and
exactly. And looking into maybe um e-com, like holistic products, like helping smaller businesses. We have a big audience, we have a big list, helping businesses like sell their products throughout the year. That's something that maybe will come in 2024. But then we just launched the retreats. So I had been running retreats, like wellness retreats forever, but now we want to really do more like leadership and professional retreats and that are holistic,
mm,
and it's called The Retreat because I really think I was like, there's a thing about it. It's like the retreat. Like you're going to like come in and it's going to be this like powerful like experience and bringing together just like really powerful women, like really powerful women. Um, this whole year for me has been about leadership and and owning that leadership. Like I knew I was a leader, but I was like a self-conscious leader, and I don't care anymore. So I really want to help people be leaders. And it's funny because even my marketing and everything, like I'm like, you're going to run a retreat, you're going to be a leader. You want to have an expo, you want to be a leader. Like it's really all about that like inner leadership architecture that to me is just like, oh, it's like that alchemy of like, stop giving a shit of like what people might think of you and step into that untapped power that you have. And that's not for everyone, right? Not everybody gets to be a leader. But if you're feeling it, like that's really what I want to help people with now, because that just like up levels your business, it up levels your life. Like I did a talk about this the other day at a company, and like the little different kinds of leadership styles. And I think it's just so fun to find that alignment, right? It's like my daughter wanted me to read her the chakra book last night. And so I was telling her about the chakras and really like, if we're like designing our ideal life, our level 10 life, like what does that look like in your energetic state? So it's super fun. Like for me, it's super fun and super rich. The work that I get to help people with, and where as the expo being, a day, and actually LA, we're shifting it to 2 days, where the Friday we're going to be doing like workshops and master classes. And then Saturday is more of like the potpourri of everything. But I'm like, we need depth. Like I teach at my own show. I've been teaching at the Yoga Expo even before I owned it. And there's something about like, I want an hour and a half with people, not just like 50 minutes. So we're bringing that in. And so we're super excited about that.
Amazing. So many incredible things ahead. I can't wait to continue following them, being involved in them,
Yes.
and making sure that everyone who is interested in connecting with you can. So I'll put all of your links in the show notes. And even if you're listening and you're not interested in yoga, remember that Ari is a master at marketing and a master at marketing wellness professionals.
Yeah.
So if this is a place that you feel called to, even as a side hustle, and you need some support, Ari would be an incredible resource for you. So thank you so much for coming on to the pod, sister.
Thank
I'm so
you.
glad we had this
Oh my
conversation.
God, so glad. And I know there's more collaboration in the future. We'd love to have you in LA. So much.
Yay.
And the retreats and everything. So super, super beautiful. Thank you, Corissa. Saint Laurent. I love your last name. I could say it all day.
And I love the way you say it.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.